The question I started asking maybe 5 to 10 years ago in a very serious way, which had echoes of it beforehand, was what does it mean to be human? And if you start asking that question, I wanted to ask that question through the lens of a mathematician. What does it mean to be human as a mathematician? And so the Christian faith says actually that this world, though amazing and beautiful and gorgeous and attractive, is still broken. There are parts of it that just don't fit, and there are echoes of glory in the background. It's pointing to something more amazing than what we have right now. And so that more amazing world is the new heaven and the new earth, when things will all be set right. So being a mathematician, I got curious. What will math be like in the new heaven and the new earth, right? Like, how much of this math is going to last? Because you always want to make a lasting impact on whatever you do. And how much of the math is going to fade? And if it's going to fade, why am I spending time on that stuff? And if it's going to last, I want to spend a lot more energy there. So, true with any friendships we have, right? We have 1,000 friends, and out of that, we're going to pour our energies into just a few of them who become really close friends, because we want those friends to last throughout our lives. We can turn to them in the worst and the best of times. And so I wanted to know in mathematics what will last. And I came to the conclusion that everything does. That's the cool thing about math, is everything is going to last. The new world's going to take the mathematics we do, and you're going to see it in a much better way. But more importantly, though, this new world is going to be a physical world, just like this one. So in other words, it's not that the physical world, maybe as Buddhism or maybe Hinduism says, is kind of this temporary place where you can't wait to get out of it and to become disembodied and purely spirit. It's actually the physical world rocks. It's amazing. So in the new earth, this new heaven and the new earth where God and his people are going to be together, is a place where the physical world is going to be there, except you're going to see it the way it was meant to be seen. The photograph you hold in your hand will now become the real place. Instead of a photograph of the Grand Canyon, you're going to be at the Grand Canyon. It's going to be amazing. And so how can we make that come to the world today? How can we make the future be like that in the world today? And so what I wanted to start asking is, how do you make math physical? That's the question I really wanted to ask. If the new world's going to be physical, how's math physical? It turns out, if you think about the academic life, academia is the most ivory tower of every discipline, right? You could be a plumber, a carpenter, you could be a CEO, you can be a data analyst, at least touching the keyboard, knocking away. But an academic is like sitting, literally thinking, without actually interacting. There's this notion of just literally thinking in the ivory tower about thoughts. And the most whitest of the white collar is a mathematician. Because a chemist is actually doing chemical things, and a physicist is doing physical things, and a linguist is thinking about literature over time and the change of words. But a mathematician, man, we're just in our thoughts, these abstract ideas. So what I want is, how do you make math physical? And I started working with artists over the years, because artists actually are deeply embedded in physical things. And I, as a mathematician who cares about shape, thought, man, who else but an artist who's thought about physical things and images to collaborate with? So I started working with artists that, we've done struggles with unsolved problems on spaces of trees and genetics. We have paintings that we did. Worked with artists in lots of different ways, but the most recent one that is kind of exciting is a collaborator and I, Diane Hoffus. She's another mathematician. She and I got together, formed a team of faculty and students and alum and community members, and we raised about $50,000, and we built a 2-ton sculpture that we took to Burning Man. And the sculpture is remarkable for several things. One, the outside of the sculpture is shaped like a dodecahedron, but the hinges of the pentagonal hinges open, and you can actually get in. And the outside looks like the Matrix iconography, where the lights kind of look like these matrix flow, which asks the question of what does it mean to be human in terms of a computer controlling you. And the inside, once you go inside the dodecahedron, it's lined with about 10-foot tall mirrors. It's a mirrored room of a dodecahedron, and it's basically reflecting you all around. So now all of a sudden you're absolutely human. You're not in this outside environment. And it asks the question, now that you've kind of gone past technology, what does it mean to be human in the middle of all this? So that's the artistic framework of how we thought of it. But in terms of the object itself, it turns out that a mirrored dodecahedron is a really close example of what our current shape of our universe could be. The shape of the Earth is a sphere, but what's the shape of the universe? It turns out that the Poincare dodecahedral sphere, which is a version of the dodecahedron where you can kind of pass through walls and do these cool tricks, the mirrored dodecahedron comes comes to scratch that itch of what the shape of our universe could be. So that's really cool. It's an unsolved problem of what the universe is. And also there's an unsolved math problem, which is, can you take any polyhedron and cut along the edges and unfold and lay it flat? So Albrecht Dürer, 500 years ago, asked this question. Is it true that any polyhedron can be laid flat by cutting along the edges? And it's still an unsolved problem today. It's the biggest unsolved problem in geometry that I know of. And so it turns out the dodecahedron actually unfolds, that you can get in just like the way Dürer imagined. And then you could fold back in and get into the shape of this universe. So it deals with these unsolved questions of mathematics, unsolved questions of physics and cosmology, and yet it's a physical object that people can interact with and think about what it means to be human.